Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Will the Home Secretary make a statement about the use of removal targets in the Home Office?
The Secretary of State for the Home Department, Secretary Amber Rudd.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I gave evidence about the Windrush generation at the Home Affairs Select Committee, about the people who contributed so much and who should never have experienced what they have. These people are here legally and should never have been subjected to any form of removal action. And as I told the Home Affairs Select Committee yesterday, I have seen no evidence that that has happened. Everyone in this House agrees that this group were here legally, but also that people who are here illegally should be treated different to legal migrants. And I am personally committed to tackling illegal migration because I have seen firsthand the terrible impact it has on the most vulnerable in our society. The exploitation and abuse which can come hand in hand with illegal migration. That's why my department has been working to increase the number of illegal migrants we remove. I have never agreed that there should be specific removal targets, and I would never support a policy that puts targets ahead of people. The immigration arm of the Home Office has been using local targets for internal performance management. These were not published targets against which performance was assessed, but if they were used inappropriately, then I am clear that this will have to change. I have asked officials to provide me with a full picture of performance measurement tools which are used at all levels and will update the House and the Home Affairs Select Committee as soon as possible.
Diane Abbott.
Another day, another revelation about the Windrush Scandal. Yesterday, giving evidence to the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee, the Home Secretary said in terms, we don't have targets for removals. But the General Secretary of the Immigration Service Union told the committee earlier that there was a net removals target that enforcement teams had to meet, and they're aiming to remove a certain number of individuals in any given month. The General Secretary later confirmed that the target this month was 8,337, with targets on posters in regional centres. When Lord Carrington resigned over the Falklands, he said it was a matter of honour. Isn't it time that the Home Secretary considered her honour and resigned?
Home Secretary.
I would like to make the very clear distinction between legal and illegal migrants. And when the Right Honourable Lady talks about the Windrush cohort, we have already established that the Windrush cohort is here legally, and this government is determined to put that right, which is why I've put in the new measures to ensure that that happens. I believe I have addressed the issue of targets, referring to the fact that there are some offices which are working with them. Unfortunately, I was not aware of them, and I want to be aware of them, which is why I'm now putting in place different measures to ensure that that happens.
Let me see. Sir Nicholas Soames.
Would my right honourable friend be assured that she has the total support of this side of the House? The total support of this side of the House in trying to resolve a very difficult legacy issue. And will she agree with me that it is not the same thing at all as the party opposite tries to make? That dealing with the Windrush generation, who are entirely entitled to be here, is not the same as removing illegal immigrants.
Secretary.
Well, I thank my right honourable friend for putting it so clearly. It is such an important distinction to make. This government, like many governments before, including Labour governments, took action against illegal immigrants. Some former Labour Home Secretaries had some very clear targets about removing illegal migrants. Removing illegal migrants is what governments should be doing in order to protect the taxpayer and in order to make sure that no abuse takes place in the UK.
Alison Thewlis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The revelation that Home Office removal targets exist really comes as no surprise to me or any of the hundreds of constituents who have come to my surgeries over the past 3 years. There is a litany of callous incompetence in this department. And it is a problem of deliberate policy, cruel, hostile environment policy by the former Home Secretary, now Prime Minister, and continued unabated by the current Home Secretary. Can she tell this House when were targets introduced? Who signed them off? How were they monitored? Can she tell us about the local targets and were they in place in Scotland? Can she tell us what happened to Home Office caseworkers who failed to meet those targets? If it's true that these posters were being displayed to remind staff of the targets, how is it possible that the Home Secretary and the Director General of Borders, Immigration and Citizenship were not fully aware of this? This Home Secretary is presiding over a department out of control, marked by cruelty and chaos. Will she stop shielding the Prime Minister? Will she do the honourable thing and resign?
Secretary.
I think that once more the Honourable Lady is confusing the difference between legal and illegal migrants. And I do not think that she, like any other member of this House, would want the UK to be a home for illegal migrants, which is why we have policies which make it difficult for illegal migrants to thrive in the UK. And that is exactly the right thing to do. It was started under former governments. It has been continued under this one, because we must remove people who are here illegally.
Mr. Philip Davis.
Speaker, can I urge my right honourable friend not to be knocked off course by the parties opposite on the issue of illegal immigration? Most people in the real world, outside of the Labour Party, the SNP and the metropolitan London elite in the media, believe that the government don't do enough to remove illegal immigrants from this country, not that they're doing too much. So can I urge her to not be knocked off course by the parties opposite, because all they're demonstrating is how out of touch they've become with working class communities up and down the country.
Secretary.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his comment, and he is right. The public expect us to remove illegal migrants who are here, who do damage to our society. And it is right that the Home Office has a policy which makes sure that that has happened. But once more, I want to be absolutely clear that that is not the case with the Windrush cohort who are here legally, and the group of people that we are reaching out to make sure that we support them and get the documentation they need.
Yvette Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But it is obviously deeply disappointing that the Home Secretary did not know the facts when she gave evidence to us yesterday, and I look forward to more detail from her on this. But can I also ask her to follow up? The Foreign Office have said that in April 2016, as part of regular ministerial dialogue with Caribbean partners, Foreign Office ministers were made aware of concerns about some immigration deportation cases. Were those concerns passed to Home Office ministers, and what did they do?
The Right Honourable Lady raised that with me yesterday, and I have said to her then, as I repeat here, I will look into that and I will come back to her with an answer to that question as soon as I can.
Sir Desmond Swain.
Her remedy has been rightly generous, but shouldn't the target for law-breaking always be zero?
Well, that is a target we can all agree with, Mr. Speaker.
Lammy.
I asked the Minister, at the last urgent question, how many people had been deported. She said she didn't know. I asked her how many people had been imprisoned in our own country. She said she didn't know. There are impact statements that have been ignored. There are letters from MPs, and she said she wasn't aware of a pattern. We now understand that people have been removed because of targets, and she said she didn't know. I say with all conscience, is she really the right person to lead this Office of State?
Well, I say to the honourable gentleman that he asked early on about the issue of removals, and I have addressed it in the action that I've taken and in the report that I gave to the Select Committee yesterday. We have established that there were 8,000 people within the cohort that might have been of the Windrush sort of characteristics, the sort of indication that he has put in his social media, and we have gone through them and found of the 7,000 we have looked at by hand, there are none that qualify in terms of the removal. He quite rightly continues to ask questions about what might have happened in different situations, but I must respond to him by saying until we have looked, we cannot have a definitive answer, because this has come as some element of surprise to have this particular shape. It hasn't come, it came as a number of cases that came to the Home Office over a period, but as we discussed yesterday in the Select Committee, there were indications, but they weren't put together as the systemic failure that clearly took place.
Sir Patrick McLaughlin.
Is my right honourable friend aware that when the opposition talk about a culture of fear being spread, that it was the Shadow Home Secretary in 2013 who complained about a reduction in the number of illegal immigrants being deported?
Secretary.
Well, my right honourable friend raises an important point. There are plenty of examples and quotations from the party opposite about their targets and determination to remove illegals. But I would say to the House that removing illegals is something that everybody, every government should and does want to do, and this government makes no excuse of wanting to do that. But the Windrush group that we all respect are in a completely separate group. They are legal, and we want to make sure that we look after them.
Sir Edward Davey.
Government have a target to reduce immigration, legal or illegal. Could it be that officials were following Minister's lead?
Home Secretary.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I would say to the right honourable gentleman that it is my experience that our caseworkers work with compassion and care when they look at administering their duty. And under this leadership, I will always make sure that they do.
David Jones.
Right honourable friend say to what extent her department's ability to monitor and assess the level of illegal immigration was impeded by the abandonment of exit checks in 1998.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for that. He is right, of course, that exit checks are an important part of making sure that our borders are secure and that we know who comes and goes. And I'm very pleased that this government reintroduced them in 2015.
Hal Williams.
Mr. Speaker, I've always been puzzled as to why my constituent, Shiromani Satkanaruja, a Londoner and a student at Bangor University, was wrongly detained at Yarl's Wood last year. The answer now seems to be clear. She was a Tamil who escaped from Sri Lanka as a child and was reporting to the police station as she was required to under law, doing her duty under law. She was, to use that horrible, dehumanising phrase, low-hanging fruit. What is the Home Secretary now doing to identify and provide redress to those not of the Windrush generation, but whose lives have been wrongly disrupted by Home Office target chasing?
Mr. Speaker, let me say quite clearly, I would never use that phrase, and it is not an approach that I would want anybody to take who works in the Home Office. I have said that as a result of the Windrush changes, I'm making sure that the Home Office has a more human face. So I'm setting up a new contact centre. I'm making sure there are more senior caseworkers to ensure that the more junior caseworkers have the confidence to make their decisions by engaging with somebody who's really experienced. I accept we need to make the Home Office more personal, and I will be doing that.
I'm keen to accommodate a few more colleagues, but there's huge pressure on time, and therefore all inquiries, without exception, need to be very brief, and the responses characteristically so from the Home Secretary. Mr. Philip Holloway.
Well, I commend the Home Secretary for her response to the Windrush scandal, but press her on the separate issue of illegal immigration. Press reports this week show that 27,000 illegal immigrants were arrested by 28 forces over the last 4 years. Why is it being left to the police to arrest illegal immigrants? Why aren't they being stopped at the border?
Home Secretary.
Well, I accept from my honourable friend the point that we should do more at the border, and there are elements where we are having some success, and I would point particularly to our juxtaposed border in France, in Calais, where we stop an enormous amount of illegals who try to get to the UK. We are investing more money alongside the French to make sure that we can have more success there, so I hope that he will see some progress.
Stephen Doughty.
Mr. Speaker, this isn't about illegals. This is about British citizens and people who have legally the right to be here. Now, can the Home Secretary explain? This goes well beyond the Windrush generation. Can she tell us how many cases are known to ministers and officials of people who have been wrongfully deported or wrongfully detained? I know for a fact there are cases in both, and I met some of the individuals yesterday. How many in both categories?
Home Secretary.
Well, as I have said to the honourable gentleman yesterday at the Select Committee, as a result of the Windrush scandal, what we are doing is going back to 2002 to look at whether there have been any deportations that could be inappropriate, and I will make sure that when we have that information, I come back to the committee.
Bob Blackman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. When I was elected in May 2010, I was shocked by the sheer number of cases that I had to deal with straight away on unresolved immigration cases. Does my right honourable friend recall the fact that under the last Labour government, the then Home Secretary had to have 2 separate amnesties because no one knew how many were here?
I do recall that. I do recall some of the choice phrases that previous Labour Home Secretaries used about the Home Office, but under this leadership we will be able to change that and make some real progress.
Diana Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, immigration is one of the most high-profile areas that the Home Secretary is responsible for, and one that the public care deeply about. Was she asleep when she didn't know that there were targets for the removal of illegal immigrants?
I would say to the Honourable Lady that immigration is a really important part of the Home Office and of the Home Secretary's role. It is not the only part of my role, but it is a part I take a really serious interest in. And I believe that the changes that I'm going to be making will enable there to be better monitoring of issues that arise, such as the Windrush cohort, which is a situation, as we've discussed before, that has been going on for many years and was not spotted by any previous government. I hope that those changes will help to give me those sort of alerts.
Jeremy Quinn.
Whatever the historic background to the problems, the government is committed to pay compensation where appropriate to members of the Windrush generation. Will the Home Secretary confirm that it should be wide-ranging in the consultation that she'll be having before putting that scheme in place?
Good question.
I do think it's important to set up a compensation package. I do think it's important that that compensation is independently monitored, and I think it is important there is a consultation put in place before that takes place. So I hope that my honourable friend will be satisfied when I set that out in due course.
John Woodcock.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think people will accept that she and her lead official did not deliberately mislead the Home Affairs Select Committee yesterday, not least because what she said was so easily disproved. But it is a very serious matter that she and her lead official appeared not to be aware of these removal targets.
Well, I repeat to the honourable gentleman, I have not authorised any targets for the future. I have seen the information that has been revealed and heard about the types of phrases that the honourable gentleman used that was apparently used to the committee, and I thoroughly disagree with that. I think we should have a compassionate, clear and informed approach to immigration, and that is what I'm going to ensure takes place.
Kevin Nolan-Rake.
Mr. Speaker, quite rightly, my right honourable friend has set up a dedicated team to deal with these issues in the Windrush generation. Could she update the House on how quickly these cases are being processed?
Yes, I committed in the House to make sure that when the information is collected by my task force, that the conclusions and the documents will be passed to the individuals within 2 weeks. That is being exceeded at the moment, and it is my strong aim and ambition to ensure that that high level of service is kept up, because they deserve nothing less.
Paula Sheriff.
Does the Home Secretary agree with her predecessor, the current Prime Minister, that she is sick and tired of ministers who blame others when something goes wrong? And surely, if she does take full responsibility for this serious issue, then perhaps she should do the honourable thing and resign.
Nonsense. I do take serious my responsibility, but I do think that I am the person who can put it right. I understand that the House will want to hold me to account for that, but I am confident that the changes I am committed to putting in place and the transparency that will go with that will deliver the changes that are expected.
Matt Warman.
That the Home Secretary bears in mind the views of my constituents, who have praised the compassion that she has expressed on behalf of the Windrush generation, but have also said that they would like a continued focus on the removal of illegal migrants who take advantage unfairly of all law-abiding taxpayers.
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his question, and while not in any way minimising the serious nature of what took place with the Windrush group, I can agree with him that in the vast majority of cases and situations, my office, the UKVI, does an excellent job, and I am proud of the work that they do.
Peter Kyle.
Extreme pressure put on the local teams is coming from the central target to reduce immigration to the tens of thousands and include international students in that target. Is now not the time to rethink that central approach to immigration and to make sure we focus the pressure where it needs to be focused, not on the ones that are unrealistic?
Well, I say to the honourable gentleman that the targets that were apparently being looked at were for illegal migrants. So I do think that it is wholly different. There may be a time for a discussion on legal migration, but at the moment I think it is right that our focus is on illegal migration to make sure that it is done in a fair, compassionate and transparent way.
Michelle Donovan.
Mr. Speaker, yet again the opposition party are playing politics with people's lives. Agree with me that it is morally wrong to confuse illegal immigration with that of the Windrush generation.
I believe she makes an important point. The strong difference between legal and illegal migration. And if the members opposite looked back on their own former Home Secretaries, they would find some very strong language and some clear targets on removing illegals from this country.
Single-sentence inquiries without semicolons or subordinate clauses, please. Drew Hendry.
It's the delight, Mr. Speaker. Many Highland families have faced deportation or have been deported due to highly technical or even rule changes during compliance. Does the Secretary of State agree that this aggressive targeting is ripping the heart out of Highland communities?
Well, I would say to the honourable gentleman that I have resolved to put in place a more personal system when applicants go to UKVI, and I think and hope that his constituents will in due course notice a difference as well.
Personified, Anna Soubry.
It's not fair, Mr. Speaker. You set me up to fail, and I always do. Look, this is a serious issue. Would my right honourable friend agree with me that part of Labour's dreadful legacy was an obsession with targets? And as an excellent new broom, would she assure us that she is going to search out every nook and cranny and make sure immigrants, migrants are seen as people and not numbers?
I completely agree with her approach. I do not want us to be run by a target culture. I want to make sure that the individual is put at the heart of any decision.
Richard Burden, also brevity personified in my experience.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll do my best. Isn't the problem here, though, that a culture of tunnel vision suspicion has been encouraged in the Home Office, a culture that only last week in my own constituency led officials to attempt to remove a man who'd come to this country legally on a multi-entry visa to be with his wife, who'd just been through a difficult pregnancy and termination, and who'd booked a return ticket to Jamaica, but who officials said had, quotes, undermined his position because he'd said he wanted to spend as much time with his wife as he was legally able to do. Isn't there something wrong with that kind of mindset?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I hope that the honourable gentleman was able to resolve the situation for his constituent. I have had nothing but praise from MPs about the MP's hotline, which works well for people being able to engage with. Clearly, there's a few exceptions to it down on my right, but most colleagues across the House have said it works well, and I hope that was able to be of assistance.
Ah, yes, Mr. Chalk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Illegal immigration is wrong because it creates unfairness to those legal migrants who do the right thing and play by the rules, like the Windrush generation. Isn't it vital that we keep that distinction and don't allow the party opposite to cynically conflate the two for political purposes?
that my honourable friend is right. It is a completely different situation. Everybody in this House wants to welcome the Windrush cohort and make sure that they are properly looked after, that there is a compensation scheme put in place, but we all have a different view about illegal migrants, and that is the right thing to do.
Rachel Maskell.
Thank you. This week, the Home Secretary has said there are a number of policy initiatives she wasn't aware of. Therefore, who is running her department?
Good question. Very good question. Well, Mr. Speaker, I accept the criticism on the issue that I debated earlier today and the conversations I had with the Home Affairs Select Committee. That's why I'm at the House, in order to set out the changes that I'm going to be making. And I hope that I'll be able to have the opportunity to make those clear to the House in the future, to continue to develop the confidence of everybody involved.
I'm lucky to have constituents who've come from all over the world to Leicestershire, and they're absolutely inspirational people. But does the Home Secretary agree with them that it would not be fair to abolish the distinction between people like them who've done the right thing and obeyed all the rules and those who have come to this country illegally?
It is a good point that people who have come here legally, who go through the rules, who pay sometimes quite a high cost to become a member of our communities, they are also the ones who do not want to see illegal migration treated trivially, which is why we are committed to making sure that we do take a firm approach to illegal migration.
Chris Elmore.
As reported by Pfizer Islam yesterday, the Foreign Office in 2013 funded videos promoting deportation to Jamaica, but acknowledged that the challenge of resuming a life after an absence of 20 or 30 years can be daunting. Could the Home Secretary explain why government departments are pushing for deportations to countries like Jamaica?
Secretary. Including remark of the honourable gentleman's, we are not pushing for that sort of event. I mean, he may want to bring videos into the chamber, but I'm not aware, Mr. Speaker, that we're allowed to play them in here yet.
Julian Knight.
My right honourable friend is showing real steadfastness throughout this situation. Is she aware of the disquiet on the doorsteps in Solihull over illegals accessing services, and that all sensible countries have balance in their approach to immigration, including removal when necessary?
Well, I thank my honourable friend for his comment, and he is right. His constituents, like mine, will want to make sure that services like available from the DWP, like benefits, are not made available to illegals. And of course, Labour supported those when they were in office some years ago, and this government has continued to build on that.
That's right. Mr. Backman.
Mr. Speaker, the Home Office decides who is legal and who is illegal in this case. I have seen deported or threatened with deportation, a man with scars on his back from whipping, somebody who is terminally ill and later died, somebody who has dead children buried in my constituency. All of those people have been classed as illegal by the Home Office. Surely they should not be removed.
Well, all those cases sound very difficult, but I would say to the honourable lady that I can't make immigration comments on the floor of the House, but I'm very happy if she wants to talk to me or send me individual cases. I will make sure that we look at them.
Vicky Ford.
Thank you. Can I thank my right honourable friend for being completely focused on getting help to real people who need it and deserve it? And can she reassure my constituent that when the compensation scheme is designed, it will be done so in full consultation with those people who deserve the compensation?
Well, my honourable friend is right. We need to make sure that the compensation scheme does address the actual needs of people who have lost out by not having their proper documentation put in place by successive governments. That's why I'm committed to having a consultation on the scheme and making sure that it is run independently.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Home Secretary please commit to Home Office officials playing by the rules as well and look into the case of the partner of my constituent, Kelly, who was deported back to Jamaica last week? We've known, whilst his appeal had still not been decided and he had no notice, his partner is due to give birth in 4 weeks' time.
Thank the honourable lady for raising it with me. The Immigration Minister is sitting beside me, and I know she will want to discuss that case with the honourable lady.
Independent Inspector's report in 2015 reported, and I quote,
the family returns process's target for the financial year 2014-15 was 252 returns, including both voluntary returns and required returns. Is or isn't that a target? Did the Home Secretary or predecessor know about it? Or is it still in place or isn't it?
Well, I would say to the Honourable Lady that we made changes in 2010 which were specifically to support families and children who might be at risk of being removed. For instance, we banned the detention of children outside of families, which had been taken place before 2010. So I believe that we made some changes in 2010 and forwards, which really were trying to assist families and children rather than the opposite.
Speaker, does she consider the Chagos Islanders, who are in the UK because they were forcibly removed from their ancestral homelands by the British state, to be illegal migrants? And are any attempts to remove them counted towards these targets?
Mr Speaker, I know the Chagos Islands have a specific situation, and I know that the Member of Parliament for Crawley is going to be bringing his bill soon, and I look forward to hearing the arguments on it.
No, Peter Grant.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Even if they avoid final deportation, this experience of being arrested and detained indefinitely without trial is a humiliating and degrading experience for any innocent person. Can the Home Secretary tell us how many innocent, legally here people have been subjected to unlawful arrest and detention thanks to these targets?
Well, I don't accept the premise of his question. I mean, the real issue here, which started with how the Windrush generation have been treated, is one that I am looking at very seriously, because I believe that they were incorrectly identified in some cases as illegal, when, of course, as we all know, they are here legally. That's the caseload that I'm going through at the moment. We've gone through 8,000 out of 9,000, back to 2002, and we have not yet found anybody who meets that threshold.
Thank you. Order.